Hello, and welcome to Titans Review Corner. Today, I thought that I would do a sort of versus, because I decided to sit down and watch the new remake, Clash of the Titans. Now, I already had mixed feelings about it before I saw it, mainly because I love the 1981 original, which I conveniently have here on DVD. Not that that matters. Anyway, so I actually decided to write up some things this time to make sure I didn't forget anything. Are you ready? So, this is the original 1981 Clash of the Titans versus the 2010 Clash of the Titans versus the actual story. Because let's face it, Greek mythology isn't very long, so I ended up reading it last night. Oh, with that, let us begin. Enter new movie. Exposition. Okay. Now, I sort of understand why they did that, especially since I don't think kids nowadays actually are taught any Greek mythology stories. But why not? Let's ponder on that a moment. Anyways, so they have to give us an exposition of the pantheon of Greece. Considering it was all CG, space... Okay. It was actually very interesting to watch and listen to. Though, I started going, okay, is that right? Yeah, okay, I think that's close. A movie's allowed to take liberties. That's okay. That's okay. When you start taking too many, then, that's another story. But we'll get to that. Still, for those of us that do know our Greek myths and pantheon, exposition, are you calling us stupid? I've got my eye on you. Alright, so, one thing that I thought was very interesting in the new one that didn't play at all in the original or the story, but this is one of the few exceptions where I was like, okay, that's cool that they threw that in there. They have the gods talking, which that was in the original. But what they're talking about is how humans worshiping them give them power. Wow! They actually touched on something that's sort of important, though never actually brought up. And I do usually agree with Film Brain's Show Don't Tell. That was one of the few things that not a lot of people sit down and think about, except, the silly Greek mythos lover people. So, the fact that they actually brought that up and said it, I give them a pat on the back for that. Yes, and due to the gods talking at the beginning, because this was right at the beginning, within the first 10 minutes. Plot point. Let's see here. So the story. Alright. Original Clash of the Titans. We have our hero who starts off as a baby. They don't really give him any backstory. He shows up. He's been saved by another person in another city, far away in the ocean, across some point of ocean. They find out that he is the son of Zeus and has to go on a journey. The way that this movie sets it up was lackluster. It was made in 1981, so that really isn't an excuse for the storytelling. because now that I look back at it, as much as I love this movie, it's kind of disjointed as far as, you know, we're here at point A, not really a lot to show us getting to point B, to point C, etc. So there's the parts in the middle, and I realize that if not done right, that would be really boring. But it seems just a little bit too rushed, I think is the word I'm looking for. So that being said, we have Perseus grow up, and he somehow, I just watched this a few months ago. He runs into Andromeda, and he falls madly in love with her. Yay for taking that straight from the story. And finds out that she's cursed. Every night he goes to this character called Calibos, which I actually didn't see in the story. Maybe I didn't read it well enough. And every night she must go to them, and he asks her to marry him. Okay, that's interesting, because Calibos is cursed. He looks like a monster, sort of, like he's half man, half monster. In the 1981 version, not so monstery. I mean, decent makeup job, but they could have gone a lot more with it. So Perseus takes it upon himself that he's going to rescue the princess, even though she's only half needing to be rescued. So he goes on a journey, and right before we have the journey, he shows up, and he's having this dinner with the king and the queen and the daughter. And the queen, being the idiot and that was a prideful, bad word lady, she decides to proclaim that her daughter is prettier than, I think, Athena? You know, I can't remember in the original which goddess is, because it's different actually in the story. And so she shows up and curses them, saying that the city will be destroyed if they don't sacrifice the princess to the Kraken. Okay? Okay. So we continue on, and Perseus is now like, alright, I must go defeat the Kraken, so therefore I get the princess, and how do I defeat the Kraken? He goes to these 3 witches. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but in the story they're called Grey Ladies, which I thought was very interesting. And they have only 1 eye between the 3 of them, and apparently 1 tooth. I won't ask about that. So he tricks them by getting his hands on the eye and asking, like, how to defeat the Kraken. He finds out that it is by the head of Medusa the Gorgon, who has slight human snake tail, snakes for hair. There's scales and other stuff too, which I don't think either movie really incorporated well enough. They go into quite detail in the story. So then he heads off. He runs into right before or right after Pegasus, who has been trapped by a trap. He frees Pegasus, and now they're buddies, which awesome on the claymation far away shots. They did a superb job with those. Slightly, I hate to say it, slightly more believable than the CG in the new movie. It's still not there, folks. It's still not there. So he continues on his journey, which ends him up in a desert at some point. Or Calibos's swampy, deserty area. He, at one point, cuts off his hand, and it turns into a giant claymation scorpion. Okay, I didn't know that could happen. But this is Greek myth. Really, anything can happen. So we get, a fight scene that's pretty cool. Some other stuff happens, not necessarily very important to the plot. I think he leaves cannabis to live. He doesn't survive by the end of the movie, but that's, being the bad guy, he's probably going to die anyway. So, then he reaches Medusa, and he has to be very smart. He cannot look at Medusa or he'll turn to stone. So he uses his special shield that he got from Zeus much earlier in the film. It was really awkward how he got it. It's like, oh, I think I'll give him a sword and a shield. There's this, how do I describe it, play set. He sits them down. They're right next to him in real life. I know he's supposed to be a god. I think I actually like this in the new one. So, sorry, I will try not to say so as much. He has this lovely fight with Medusa and ends up taking her head. Yeah, more claymation head movings. Puts it in a special bag, which he got. I can't remember exactly when. But the bag actually was in the story too. And takes Pegasus and rides back off to Joppa. Woo! He's come to save the day! He takes the head, shows it to the Kraken turns to stone. Everybody happy. He marries the princess, and I'm pretty sure that is where our movie cuts out. So, oh gosh. Almost 30 years later, we cut back to the new movie. Now the new movie was in some ways the same, but in some ways very, very different. Some of the characters, they either omitted or changed from the original movie. The bit with the gods showed more of them, and the interaction was a little bit more. But what was interesting is Zeus and Hades. Liam Neeson and Ralph Fiennes. What a lovely pair. They even kind of look alike. It took me a second to even register Ralph Fiennes wasn't Liam Neeson. It's the long hair and same face structure. So they're obviously they had set up that Hades was mad, blah blah blah. So he's of course going to be seedy the rest of the movie because he's evil. But they both come down to earth, and that I thought was really cool. Zeus interacts with Perseus, and Hades ends up interacting with Cassiopeia and the king, whose name I can't remember right now. He ends up killing Cassiopeia, which I'm pretty sure didn't happen in there, but the scene was still really cool. The special effects, though sometimes strange, also was neat at times. They were trying to go for a balance, and I actually have to give them props for that. Most movies are just all CGI or all claymation, but to be fair, they didn't really have CGI at this point. Okay, so back to the story. Sorry, I said so again. The way that the backstory of our hero Perseus is same and yet different. They actually, it's so fascinating sometimes. They actually went into Perseus' backstory, which was actually, and they might have in this one, but if they did, they told us the showing a little bit better, especially the way that they did, though they were half right, because Greek mythology loves to use strange euphemisms like Zeus came to Diane, I think that's how you would say her name. I'm really not good with Greek. As a golden shower. Really? I wonder if that's where that term came from. But yeah, so they didn't do that. Instead, he looked like her husband and showed up, which in this version, her husband is the grandfather figure from the original story. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. Well, it would be her father. Yeah. So he tried to kill them by putting them in a box, and putting them in the ocean. I don't know where they go with this stuff. But in this version, the mother dies. In the original story, she doesn't. Okay? You know, though that completely cancels out part of the original story in which the Perseus's mother, Diane, whatever, when they end up in this new area, the king actually falls in love with her and demands the head of Medusa because he didn't have a horse and everybody was supposed to give him a horse. Yeah. So that whole part of the story was completely cut off, obviously. That's why the new movie is clearly trying to be closer to this one, which I don't think was a good idea in the long run. Back to the story. Then we have Perseus grow up. His adoptive family is killed off by Hades, it looked like. It's kind of hard to tell with some of the CG effects. And so therefore he's upset. He doesn't find out until a little bit later, which this lady pops out of nowhere. Though, to be fair, I wasn't paying 100% close attention the first 10-15 minutes. But her name is Io, which isn't in the story. And she's been watching him all of his life because she was cursed to be young. Oh, cursed to be young. Anyways. Fair enough. She's clearly going to be the one to help him on this journey, even though that was supposed to be Hermes. Gotta have that love interest there because we can't have him fall in love with Andromeda like the original story. Movie, why did you think this was a good idea? Alright. So the same scene with Cassiopeia, the king, and her name I just forgot. Andromeda. But this time Hades shows up and he says, "Alright, I'm gonna take my wrath out on you." And she's dead. Cassiopeia. Which was by far the coolest, like, 2 steps under the melty face from Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Yeah, that was pretty awesome. It would have been even better if they'd been able to do that with makeup, because obviously we CG. But that aside, that was pretty cool. So now he mentions the whole Kraken thing, which it's called a monster in the story. They never actually give it a name. Fascinating, right? Now our hero must go and save the day. But he has this huge band of people show up, including people that are clearly much farther away than where they're from. Okay? And they hint towards Persian lines, which is cool because that actually is part of the story. Joppa is located around the Gaza Strip area, or Giza Strip area. So, okay, I didn't actually know exactly where the story took place, so yay for reading up on that. Cut ahead. They go on the epic journey, which, can we stop getting the stupid epic music that we have playing over and over and over again every time they have to go and show us moving. I loved the idea of them showing us how big this world was, but the music was actually killing it for me. Not because it wasn't, pretty to listen to, but because it sounded like 10 different movies I'd heard in the past 10 years. Like bits from the new Batman movies and the Pirates of the Caribbean movies, and I'm sure if I listened hard enough I could probably find X-Men or yeah, new music, please. Their journey, they lose people along the way very slowly, which I thought was kind of interesting considering how many people we had with us. They run into, Calibus runs into them, who in this version is his his mother's husband that tried to kill him and did kill his mother. Okay? So they like smushed two characters together. I don't like that. And they went to town on his face to show him how cursed he was. Anyways, Hades at one point came to him and gave him extra power so that he could go and tackle Perseus, and they get into a fight, and he ends up mortally wounding him through a bite, it looked like, or something of that nature. He gets bitten. Perseus gets bitten, and they have to. The blood actually turns into scorpions, which I was like, cool for keeping that in. Oh, and going back a little bit, just for a second, they show a reproduction of the mechanical owl in this one, which was a nice touch reference to this movie, but at the same time it actually isn't in the original story, so that it was sort of unnecessary. I mean, kudos for the tribute, hey, we know what we're taking this movie off of, but at the same time I think that it almost really didn't need to be there. Skipping back ahead, so they end up killing one of the scorpions, and that caused a lot of trouble for everybody. And of course Perseus is like, I don't want to use this sword that I got from Zeus because I don't want to be one of the gods. Nobody else can use the sword. Be a hero. Don't be a god, be a hero. That's what you're supposed to be. I didn't like Perseus in this new one at all. He was so flat and uninteresting. I liked just about everybody else. It's kind of funny. Just like, oh, there's Perseus again. Whining a little bit about how he doesn't want to be a god. How is that type... screw it. So before they end up fighting a ton more scorpions, these completely new characters, not at all related to the original story, show up. The main one is called Jin, with a silent D. Now, if anybody out there knows their mythos, they already know how wrong this is. We've crossed into complete Persian lines. To be fair, though, because it does take place in sort of a Persian area at some points, that was creative on their part. But if we're going for original story, we're out of the ballpark at this point. The Jin knows how to ride the large scorpions. Okay, I'll take your word for that. Though, interestingly enough, it looks to me that they actually built at least one of those things. There are scenes where it's clearly CGI, but others, I think they actually built one of those things. Not necessary to use CGI all the time. Alright. Well, this is probably running very long, and I'm very sorry, but I felt the need to go into detail for this. They reach the Grey Women, which, awesome. I love their concept for them. Really, really out of the box. They look not exactly how they were supposed to in the story, but still very interesting and different. And I love what they did with the eyeball. It was creepy. It's a very good looking eye. Same thing sort of happens, only he grabs the eye more by accident rather than tricking them, which... how hard would that have been to keep to the original story? No, some idiot over here has to ask a question, and they flip out about it. Oh, Paimon, we're gonna kill you. It's nothing like the original. So he gets the information that he needs. Medusa. Now, her sisters aren't mentioned at all in either story as far as my recollection goes. Which is kind of sad because I think that might have been really cool. Maybe the CGI budget didn't allow for it. But then, of course, after Perseus is fixed, and I think that was before that scene, because Jinn are like, we must work together even though I don't speak English. I'll try and get to that point another time about how I feel about English language and other languages in movies. Perseus runs into his father, technically, I think for the first time. He comes down to Earth and has a nice chit-chat about how he should just leave the humans be, he should go be a god like one of them, blah 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 blah. Perseus is like, no, I'm going to go be mopey and try and help people. And Zeus gives him a gold coin. I already knew right then where they were going. This is a problem, because Medusa is not located in Hades, or I think it's Hades, and because it's named after Hades, the underworld. Medusa is not in the underworld. She is on a private island somewhere else in our story world, along with her sisters. So they ferry by way of Styx and the ferryman, whose name is Charon. K sound. Not SH sound. Not CH sound, though that I think would have sounded nicer, but this is Greek. Charon. I've had so many people I hear say it wrong, and I think the movie even said it wrong, if I recall. That aside, the concept for Charon was beautiful, in my opinion. Basically, almost tree-like, trapped to the boat. And this withered, skeletal-like creature. And they only showed him it in a couple of shots. But it was inspiring, at least to me. Because I usually think of more like straight, almost Grim Reaper. Unfortunately, I think that's just the product of so many other Grim Reaper look-alike type things. So, Charon was out of the box. Kudos on that. I have to admit, new movie, you have some great concepts. Charon ferries them across to this island that look like it's in the middle of the underworld, where they must find and fight Medusa. Because of course Medusa isn't, going to give up without a fight. Okay, that's fine. Here we go. It was a sort of interesting fight, lots of moving around, CGI Medusa. Though the girl that they actually got that modeled her face, beautiful, beautiful girl. considering what they didn't add to Medusa, they actually kept her very, pale, gray-green skin, snake hair, snake tail, otherwise human, like didn't have horns or anything like she was supposed to. I really liked what they did with it. The turning to stone I thought also was interesting, though the original story actually implies more boulder, rock-like, so they don't actually look like themselves, they look like a rock, which I would love to see that. I don't know why. I just think that would be more out of the box at this point. So, everybody that went into the building, Io didn't go into the building. Yay. Because apparently Medusa isn't allowed to look at other women to turn them to stone. Okay, sure, whatever. And they actually explain that story, which is true from the story. Awesome. Yay for something right. Perseus comes in, he's using his shield, and takes off her head. That was actually kind of cool, though. Reminded me of 300. Takes the head, puts it in the bag, which... Do I remember where this bag came from? Somehow he has the bag, and they don't mention that she has poison. So I'm not sure if she actually was supposed to have poison blood or not. Takes the head, and what would have been really cool is if they had stuck to the story and what came out of Medusa was Pegasus and another character. Because this is Greek mythology and that happens. I would love to have watched that. No. We have the Pegasus that you see earlier in the movie, and then you see the black Pegasus, which the story is very ambiguous. It does not mention a color at all, so I really wouldn't even worry about that. So the black Pegasus shows up because he's run it out of time, and Io has somehow been injured, and I totally must have blinked because I don't remember how she got injured. And she dies. She turns into wisps and flies, and the eclipse is coming, which I really didn't notice before then. And so he takes Pegasus and he flies all the way back, which they're about to sacrifice Andromeda, and here comes the Kraken, blah! And all of this is scaring and killing people, and Zeus is like, oh, this isn't good. And Hades shows up, and he's like, hey, you're not feeling any stronger, are you? That's because I'm evil. The Kraken works for me, so I'm now more powerful. Blah! And Zeus comes back with, but my son, Perseus, have you been keeping an eye on him? No. And rushes off. He tries, sending demon wing thingies after Perseus, which actually takes him through the city because he's still on Pegasus. At one point he's flying, at one point he's riding, at one point he's flying. He manages to take them all out between himself and the dudes riding the scorpions. Then he lifts up Medusa's head because now he's in front of Andromeda, and he turns the Kraken to stone, and it causes a tidal wave, but really I don't think anybody else was injured. You'd think that would be the end of the movie. But it's not. So now he has freed Andromeda. Yay! Oh, you should stay and be king. No, I shouldn't be king because I'm a god and I don't want people to worship me. So I'm going to go away. So he rides off, and now he's on a cliff. And Zeus is back. Okay. And Zeus is like, well, if you don't want to be a god, then here, let me give you a gift. It's Io. Yay for bringing back the dead love interest. How freaking predictable is that? At least stick to the original story as far as love interests go. Alright. So then we cut out, and guess what? They're working on a sequel. Why? There are no actual Titans really mentioned in either movie. Believe it or not, I liked the new movie. I thought that the storytelling was very good and some of the acting was good. But comparing it to the original story, it's barely halfway there. Fantastic. You basically taking a mishmash of whatever it wanted from the original story and tailoring it to its needs. The old one, I feel, did better with the actual characters. I don't know, maybe because they're more lighthearted and not depressive, mopey SOBs. I did like the interaction of Zeus and Hades. I think that was a huge improvement in the God department. Not that I don't love some of the original actors that were in the original movie. That being said, that it really is all over there as far as the original story goes. The love story. Yeah. I understand that this is definitely a love story. The original movie got it right. The remake couldn't have been farther. Medusa's story, the new movie got it right. The old movie, I don't think ever really touched on it. So, I guess really it's a toss-up. Because each take parts from the original story. Each has some good and some bad. I don't know what the movies were thinking sometimes. Because, you know, the original story, although strange at times, is actually still more interesting than the new movies. That being said, it's actually time to come to the end of the review where I actually give my scores. This is so tough. This is seriously really tough for me. I don't think that I've ever come quite so close to not having a solid rate in my head. I think that they are both watchable. Therefore, they start at a B. For nostalgia value, I would give this one higher, obviously. For the acting, I would probably give this one slightly higher. For at least most of the characters. So I did really like Zeus and Hades from the new one. I'm going to give them both a B+. It's just going to be easier that way. They're watchable, they're enjoyable to definitely a degree, depending on what you want out of a movie. And I don't think I could have been any more thorough with the plot on either of them. So I hope that you enjoy this review. I'm sorry it's a little long. I guess I had a lot to say. Thank you. Have a good night.